frank discussion on life, the law, and liberty. Sponsored by the LaHood Norton Law Group. And now, your objection sustained. Your hosts, Karen Klaus and former Bexar County District Attorney, Nico LaHood.
1200 WOAI, this is Sidebar. So many things happened this week, and we're going to talk about just a few of them. We hope you stick with us every Saturday with the former Bexar County DA, Nico LaHood, trial lawyer, managing partner of LaHood Norton Law Group, and Georgia Russo, scholar, former chemist, and pharmaceutical researcher and director. This is Sidebar. Well, this week, a lot of things did happen. And there, of course, I always say, how are these things related? And then I stop for 1 second. I say, how are these things not related? So we saw something I was kind of surprised, and that was that Hunter Biden, son of President Biden, was convicted of doing something, and it doesn't matter what it is. I was just surprised that he actually was convicted, because for a minute there, I thought after President Trump got convicted on 34 counts of no charges that he was going to go free. Hunter was going to go free, but that was surprising. That the right thing was done?
It wasn't surprising if you looked at the evidence.
Well, yeah, but
I understand you understand the jury
when it comes to Trump, I looked at the evidence too. That's why I was surprised.
Yeah, but this was really bad. I mean, so you have he wrote a memoir admitting to the crime, and you have people corroborating.
He did an audio book with his own voice.
It did interviews. I mean, this was no disrespect to the prosecution. I'm sure they did an okay job, even though they tried to plead this case out and close up. See, we forget that. So they got a conviction in spite of themselves, and I don't say that to be disrespectful, but remember, but for that judge, that plea deal was insane. I mean, immunity for future, past, whatever, and then given the sweetheart deal that is not really done, pretrial diversion, I think that was, which is allowed by federal law. It's not used enough, in my humble opinion, but. It was just, and the judge said, have we ever done this before? No. Okay, well then we're not doing it now. Tell me why you can justify this. So they had no choice. Now, I think the interesting thing is that they tried the gun case over the tax case, because I think the tax case, if you're really into who's trying to protect whom, I think would lead down to the Biden family, and at least this is the theory, and this is the allegation, and this is where a lot of people believe the evidence establishes and shows, to Joe and to his uncles and to this and him being the bagman for whatever. I mean, so that whole door opens up. So this was kind of the sacrificial lamb.
Is that still on the table? Is it something that's going to come up?
Technically it is, sure. Whether it gets tried or not, it won't be tried I doubt it'll be tried before the election. And then it'll depend who wins going forward, yeah. But I mean, the evidence was, this was an open and shut case. So this was maybe surprised you, but it wasn't shocking.
Well, it surprised me because I forgot that America used to convict people that were guilty of things, because it feels like that hasn't happened in a while when it comes to the political figures in our world.
No, it happens a lot. I mean, if you think about all the elected officials that have been prosecuted and things, it's almost you have a target on your head, so you got to be careful. And
if you're on the wrong side.
Well, if you're doing wrong things, of course. I'm not talking about if you're doing things appropriately, but I'm just saying that there's a mindset out there that if you're of a title that people are looking at you, looking for something, like looking to prosecute you versus looking for crimes, and that just comes, I guess, with the territory. It's not right. But look, here's what the bottom line is: nobody's above the law, but nobody should be below the law. I mean, we got to go back to where Lady Justice keeps her blindfold on, doesn't give a crap what political party you're with. Doesn't get a crap with anything else. Just there's statutes, there's laws, federal and state, and then there's facts, and there's something called evidence. And without an agenda, people that don't affiliate and are not tribal leaders for a side just say, look, here's the statute, here's order for our society, because the Lady Justice establishes order, theoretically, to a society. And when you have tribal fights, and we have political fights, and you have weaponization of a justice system, there's no order in that. There's fear and there's scheming. And so I've always argued, you guys know that, to get away from that. Politics has no place in the justice system. Political partisanship has no place in the justice system. And I'm going to keep yelling that from the top of the hill.
I have tons more questions about what's going to happen. Is he going to go to jail? We will continue to talk about that, but don't shake your head, George. But
I mean, if he was, Nico, even if he wasn't Hunter Biden, I mean, regardless of who he is, this is a first-time deal for him, right?
And it's sentencing guidelines.
Non-violent offender, theoretically, and it's the first time, so it's unlikely that he'll see any any jail time. I don't know what the alternatives would be.
Well, you have sentencing guidelines in federal court. You have categories. You have criminal history on the top. You have categories. You're categorical with the allegation is. These are. I think I haven't looked at the guidelines. I believe they're relatively no. I don't know what section, what area it puts him in, but I don't think he's going to do any prison time or jail time.
Do you think
it's not jail time? It's prison.
Do you think Trump is going to go to jail?
I don't know.
I think that this judge.
Yeah. My question, like in regards to Biden, you think it's a strategy because in the prior election they said, well, if they would have known about the Hunter Biden laptop, right? They said that people would have changed. But now they're letting the court system deal with it. So when election comes, they'll be able to say, hey, we're dealing with it. So Trump can bring it out as an issue and say, hey, that issue, you say Trump, we're dealing with it.
Well, I heard someone try
a little too late.
Yeah, I heard someone bring that up. I guess whatever is it, Chuck Todd, whatever that fool is. But I shouldn't say fool, but I mean, I just don't respect his positions because he's not logical. It's not that his positions, I don't care about his positions. It's his logic that gets him there. It's just, ugh. But regardless of that I see this throws away the whole two-tier justice system. Well, no, time out. If it was for this justice system, this guy would have gotten a sweetheart deal that no one in the world ever gets. And this thing would have all gone away, not just this, but everything else that's pending. So slow down. This is the sacrificial lamb, Chuck. So your analogy is wrong. So that's the argument they're going to try to make, if I understood your question properly, Saulo.
For the media, what the media will use as their talking points.
Well, I mean,
Well, it's too little too late, Saulo. I mean, when you consider that for me, that's what was of great interest to me. Two things that were of interest to me, and it wasn't the Hunter Biden stuff, because this has been percolating in the news for a long time, right? But reputation that his defense attorney, Abe Lowell, is shrewd, he's smart, clever, and he really did try everything. But like Nico said, under the direct weight of evidence, I mean, good luck. I mean, he really, really tried. I mean, all kinds of stuff, all kinds of clever strategies from saying that, that somehow that when Hunter Biden was actually buying it, that there was no one around, and that the form that he filled out could have been manipulated. And in fact, but the gun shop employee was sitting 2 feet away. Highly unlikely. And then there were texts. He has texts backed up by a memoir. And where do these things come from? They come from the other issue, which I thought was of interest to me, was this laptop, right? The laptop. That's what I think is glaring here, and just complete shame on the national media, social media. This concert between Democrats, legacy media, social media during the 2020 election, and the so-called 51 intelligence officials that came forth and said that it was Russian disinformation. And yet, the evidence, the weight of evidence that basically did Hunter in comes from that very same laptop. And this is just as it pertains to Biden. Never mind all the other evidence to show this huge money trail that is incontrovertibly linked to the Biden family, but allegedly and likely linked to, what is it? The big guy, right? 10% for the big guy. So, man, what an indictment. What I want to know is what's going to come from that. Answer, absolutely nothing. There will be no accountability for it. Such is the system we have today. I can't believe that we are at a place that we actually know. We know that the election would have gone in a very different direction because voters through a number of polls have said, had I known, I would have very likely voted in a very different direction. The Media Research Center put out a poll at the tail end of 2020 that said that, in fact, if the story from the New York Post that was launched by the New York Post had, in fact, been carried by the media and it had been vetted properly and talked through properly, that Trump would have won with 289 electoral votes. I mean, so what, right? We just kind of shrug our shoulders and say, oh, well, whatever, que sera, sera, move on. This is unbelievable. Talk about election interference. Yeah, where's the accountability?
There's none, and there should be. Because if there's no consequence to bad behavior, then they have no correction. Throughout the justice system, when it came to those riots in the summer of 2020 and the BLM riots and all the other stuff, but yet an old lady is just sent to prison for being an abortion. Now, whether she blocked the door or not, I think she was more aggressive than the guys just praying that other case. But still, she's a 77-year-old lady. I mean, she ain't gonna hurt anybody. I get it. Talk about probation. Talk about find a way. Do something. Do a halfway house. Whatever the guidelines allow, or use some discretion wisely. But this is what we're talking about when you have Hunter Biden over here has substance dependency, and then you have you have an old lady at an abortion clinic, but to that 51 intel officers, you're right. I mean, there's no accountability to that. People should be outraged about that because you have, and I want to know, this is just me, I'm asking for a friend, about what, did they sign any affidavits? Did they do any sworn testimony? Did they perjure themselves? And are they going to be investigated for perjury? No. I mean, now all of them crickets. And all of those media, it should literally be put back in their face and militantly just say, no, hold on. You have zero credibility. Well, I didn't know. They told me. Well, then you didn't do your homework. You're not a true reporter. So there needs to be accountability, and there won't be unless people vote, get involved, quit watching these shows, educate other people, talk to about the situation, and make sure people that there has to be consequence. I'm not talking about revenge. I'm talking about justice and accountability.
Exactly.
Because to George's point, this has swayed the outcome, and that's what the stats tell us.
Let me say the same thing you just did. No, there's going to be no accountability. This was clearly a propaganda sting. It gave Biden a talking point at that debate in 2020 where he could actually say to Trump, oh, what are you talking about, when Trump brought it up? This is Russian disinformation. And because we have 51 so-called former intelligence officials who have signed an open letter alleging that the laptop had all the hallmarks of Russian disinformation. And if you go back and you find out who was behind that, it wasn't just some schmo. It's the present Secretary of State, Anthony Blinken, who was then an operative, who contrived this whole propaganda sting so that Biden had the talking point, which was based on complete BS. But that aside, I keep coming back to the implications. The very same people who carry on and on and on and on about Trump's election interference and Russian disinformation, that's all they do all day long is election interfere. That's all they do, because they know that they have a cadaver in the White House right now who can't construct an English sentence, doesn't know his own name or where he is, goes around sniffing people and embarrassing himself across the world stage. That's the alternative to Trump, who is obviously sharp as a tack. And so the only option, Nico, is to get rid of the opponent. You don't contest the opponent. You don't argue with the opponent. You don't try to persuade against the opponent's ideas. You take them out. This is neo-Marxist. It's communist in nature. We talk about it every single Saturday on this show because that's what's driving these people. And so the question's going to be, look at everything they've done. What won't they do next?
Don't ask that question because I don't want the answer. This is Sidebar. We have other topics we're going to talk about, like what about Pride Month? What about the arrest of some known ISIS members that walked across the border with clear records? Maybe we can get some questions, answers. We will have those topics next, coming up on Sidebar. What can people do in order to get on Facebook Live, watch, any other platform?
Sorry, I was listening to the mix, but sidebartv.com. And I will tell you once again and all the time that we need to get these conversations out there. The more, if you're watching on Twitter, YouTube, Facebook, thank you. Heart it up. It helps the algorithm. Make a comment about what they're talking about. Also, share the video if you can. But also, we want you to get involved in these conversations because it's very important. Nico always talks about it, that people say, well, you can't talk about religion and what politics. Right. That's the problem because we're not talking about it enough. So help us out on that and get the word out. Like it up, heart it up, make a comment, and share the videos.
Well, I don't say don't talk about them. I think that's the advice we were giving growing up.
True.
And that was crappy advice. I mean, we should be talking about religion and politics. Politics means just what you're advocating, and your religion just means your worldview. So how can you be a neighbor? How can you be a citizen? How can we disagree or agree? We're in the persuasion business. That's what life's about. So we persuade each other, talk respectful, but then...
There's a new podcaster. I can't remember her name. I've been watching her. She does this podcast. And you know that a controversy helps ratings, right? Controversy helps ratings. And a lot of podcasters do it, and they use that as a strategy, which is pretty cool. I'll find the name of the girl in a bit. But she's bringing in different points of views, and she tells the people watching, if you're going to make a comment that I hate her, like emotional comments, I'm going to delete you. That's not the reason for this podcast.
That's right.
And it's very interesting because she says, because once you start getting into that, you start losing the substance of the conversation. So she's handling those podcasts very well. So she's amazing.
I never heard of her. Let me know who she is.
Yeah.
It's good.
Yesterday, it was President Trump's birthday, and he spoke in Florida. And the thing that
78?
Yes, yeah. You would never think that by the way he talks. It makes me laugh to put comparisons together and to look at the memes that have been put on social media when it comes to comparing President Biden and President Trump. But the thing that he said over and over is the thing that you both have said 100 times, and it's just that you've got to make this election too big to rig. That really is the only solution, right? People have to get out.
And you do that by maximizing, that's right, Karen, to maximize voter turnout. And I think that's the big question right now. Boy, what a totally different campaign from 2016 and 2020. Organized, on the ground. Laura Trump is out there as a co-chair of the RNC saying she's got an army, 100,000 election workers and 500 lawyers across the country.
Exciting.
She says we are going to address issues as they happen in real time. No, not days, not weeks, not months after. We are going to address them as they happen. And those are the numbers she used. 100,000 election workers, 500 lawyers.
100,000?
100,000. Double that. Keep going. That's exactly what we need. We need an army in real time, Nico. In real time.
I've been very appropriately. I hope appropriately. People can disagree with me. I'll criticize Trump, and I've criticized him. Republicans, conservatives, people that claim to be Christians, whatever. I'm a truth scavenger, is what I tell people. And so I have criticized. He's frustrated the hell out of me at times, even though I voted for him. But still, and I'm going to vote for him again. But I have to stand on solid ground when I make decisions on just faith and family and, of course, the future of this country. But this is a very different man, I think. I think that trial did something to refocus him. It brought discipline because he had that gag order, and he's still under it, by the way, because he hasn't been sentenced yet, which is ridiculous. But we'll talk about that after if you want to. But he's just different. He's disciplined. He's poised. His demeanor is different. I'm going to tell you what was a home run for Trump, and there's no way Biden will accept this. He went on this guy named Logan Paul's podcast. Logan Paul, whether you like him or not, his brother's a boxer. He's a boxer. These guys were YouTubers, I guess, or influencers that they made their way in boxing, and they're both very good boxers. They're good. They usually fight people that are washed up.
Is he a boxer or a pro wrestler?
Well, he's a pro wrestler now.
Okay.
He is an athlete. That dude, wrestling's different than the way you and I grew up. I was in Bruiser Brody, Ric Flair, Devon
I
Eriks.
can't believe those names.
Bob
Eriks.
Wire in your forehead, and that razor blade, and their cuts would open, and chairs.
You're that giant.
But
You're good.
Abdul the
So
Butcher. But
funny.
nobody was jumping off the top ropes like the way they are and jumping off cages. These are athletes now. Not that they weren't back then. I know Tully Blanchard. He's a friend, and he's an old school dude, the Four Horsemen. But it's a different wrestling scene today. If you're not an acrobat, you're not a wrestler for the most part. And this dude, Logan Paul, he is an athlete. He's some type of world champion. I don't follow it anymore, but he's a world champion. He's an athlete, but he's an influencer. He's got this and that, and his brother.
Clothing, drinks.
Whatever the hell. He's done it all. Good for him. God bless him. And he's having these interesting conversations about faith, Salvo, by the way. We'll talk about that at some other time. And Trump went on his podcast. And I watched it. It was, and they would just show it
At Mar-a-Lago.
At Mar-a-Lago.
Not in his studio. At Trump's studio.
They went to Trump. And then they did a face-off that went viral.
Oh, yeah.
They did and they started laughing. It just shows you his appealability. When he walks into a UFC arena, the place goes bananas. Mm-hmm. You have 50 Cent over here. This is some rapper guy that says he's going to win. Michael Rappaport, who was a Trump just militant hater, said, I'm tired of Biden. There's a shift. There's a shift going on. Joe Rogan, other people, I'm not saying Joe Rogan has endorsed him yet, I'm just saying, but Joe Rogan endorsed Bernie Sanders before. There's just a shift going on. People are waking up, athletes, people are, especially a lot of rappers at that Bronx deal.
There's a lot of podcasters in the street that used to do it back then. Now they're coming back to it, and they're interviewing a lot of people on the street, just asking them point blank, what do you think? And there's a lot of them, a big number of them saying, I used to be a Democrat, I voted for Biden, no more.
This is a trend with him.
Yeah.
You're so right about that. And I think this is why I think every week I think with more certainty that Donald Trump's going to win the presidency in 2024. Now, that can be true, and we can also have a literal crap storm at the same time.
Sure.
This isn't going to be easy. It isn't. And these people are not just going to stand by while it happens. And it's not to say that after he wins the presidency, and I'm even talking between winning the presidency and inauguration between November 5th and January 20th of 2025, you're going to see a crap storm. You're going to see all of a sudden everybody who hates election denialism are going to wear election denialist badges with pride.
Well,
that's going to happen.
The cornerstone of a leftist.
Amen.
Sure.
So setting that aside, but Nico, you're so right. This is a complete realignment. What's happening here? I don't think people appreciate how substantial this. Look, I really wondered if Nico was nuts when he brought up the idea that this was somehow going to be a Trump strategy, or that it should be a Trump strategy, this idea of going after Gen Z. Because in my view, as I look at trends inside Gen Z, there's very few things that leave me encouraged. I walk away from polling what Gen Z is what respondents in the Gen Z demographic are saying to questions about, you name it, history, American government, lifestyle priorities, sexual choices, religion, you name it. And there's really very little to be encouraged by. Trump has set that aside, and he's just the proverbial optimist. He leaves nothing on the table. He's going, and that's what Nico's been saying. You can't leave anything on the table. And I thought, but I think there's this section called Gen Z that's pretty much dead wood. I don't really see the point of expending resources. Trump's he's certainly proven me wrong. And you're right. He's making a concerted effort. And I think that's the only way that this too big to rig can actually actualize, is that you can't leave anything on the table. Yeah. Don't assume Gen Z is all dead wood. I saw the Logan Paul interview. I wasn't going to. I tend to sort of tune out with Gen Z interviews. Sorry, if I hear the word "like" more than 3 times in an English sentence, I tune out. I liked the interview because it shocked me. I was stunned by it. There was a lot of substance. Now, Trump showed off his knowledge of sports, which I thought was pretty cool. I didn't even realize that about him. He talked about artificial intelligence. He talked about UFOs.
Aliens, yeah.
But there were actually serious concerns from arguably a thought leader in the Gen Z movement. If I used to think those things were mutually exclusive. Thoughts. Inflation, how Trump is going to end wars. I mean, these...
But they were good questions. I was
legitimate concerns.
They were legitimate concerns from Logan Paul. Jake Paul made a statement too, his brother. I mean, so these are Trump supporters. You can call them crazy, call 50 Cent crazy, call all the other rappers that are supporting Trump crazy, call the Latinos for Trump crazy, call the Blacks for Trump organizations crazy, I guess. I don't know. I mean, again, we've said this over and over, Karen, when the pain of staying the same exceeds the pain of changing, you change. Pain is a great motivator. I just pray that the pain doesn't have to get so overwhelming that it's a point of no return, because countries can fall, and they usually fall from within. We bring up Rome all the time here, and this country is falling. Look, and Logan Paul, to his credit, he said, look, President Biden's welcome on the show too. And then Trump goes, there's less than a 1% chance that guy's coming on.
He's not going to do pause like this when you
But he's not. They won't leave him alone. He's got to do very... And again, I'm not trying to, carry the water bucket for Trump. I'm gonna make objective statements. I mean, you never see any hard-hitting interviews with Biden. I mean, and it's painful to watch. It's embarrassing to watch when the Prime Minister of Italy, because he wanders off to look at some parachuters. Ooh. I mean, you're
at a G7 meeting.
G7 meeting.
Georgia Maloney.
And she's always like, come over here.
That was painful.
And then he blanked out on that Juneteenth, 18th or whatever, Juneteenth celebration. You have Vice President Harris dancing and their husband gyrating. I don't know what he was trying to do, but he was trying to dance.
Really sure what he was doing.
And then other people on the other side are having a good time. And then he just has this blank stare. I don't know.
And George Floyd's brother had to snap him out of it.
It was very weird. Yeah. It was very weird. And again, I let other people, experts in that field, make their analysis.
It's very obvious.
But it's embarrassing. People are talking, It's and now you have all the other people that have an opinion that at the Democratic convention they're going to switch him out. I have no idea. They can contemplate that all they want. We'll see what happens at the convention, and then you got to run on 3 months of work. Who knows? But there's no comparison when you put Trump and Biden by each other, and you don't have to like him. And you just got to look at their data. And this is interesting, and we've said this for a long time, and other people have said this. You're going to have a true horse race. You have 4 years of Trump, you have 4 years of Biden, and then let's just look at the report card. That's it. I mean, forget about everything else. Although I don't think Trump is handing over. I don't think he's handing over to the other side like what he used to. He used to irritate the living it out of me.
Primarily because he didn't stay focused. He would get into...
He gets into these little spats, and then look, he's arrogant, right? I mean, he is what he is. But then he shows humility. He's just over here, just gushing on Logan Paul for him being a fighter and for his success. He knows how to compliment people, too. He loves them back. But he knows how to compliment people. He's charming at times if you get past all the BS. Look, I mean, you got to give credit where credit's due. He's doing it well, what he's doing right now.
I don't think people appreciate the size of the political realignment that Trump embodies. I don't think people appreciate it. I know we think of it in short terms. We have short-term memories. But, Nico, it's an 80-year thing. You literally got to go back. The last major political realignment of this magnitude goes back to FDR after his reelection in 1936. If you're just looking at the types of people and the numbers of people that have shifted their allegiance, you grew up under this idea that the Democrat Party was the party of who? The little guy,
the working class.
The working class. Yeah. And that really came in the aftermath of FDR's win. You've got the Depression going on.
Sure.
You've got basically the little guy, the average American who's been completely bulldozed by a massive financial crisis, the nation over, indeed the world. And what does FDR do? He comes in and he resonates with them. Now, he employs Keynesian economics, which I mean, this idea that the government gets to invest all kinds of money in the private sector, not a great idea. But he comes in, what does he do? A ton, I mean, this was radical, a ton of social programs, public works, a number, and he instituted this regulatory apparatus that we see today. Thank FDR for that. All of these regulatory bodies, you can thank FDR for that. All for what? To help the little man, the working man. And you saw this massive shift, and the Democrat Party becomes the party of the little guy, and the Republican Party became the party of the what? The rich, elite college-educated people.
Right.
That has stayed the same for 80 years. In the age of Trump, he's coming down the escalator, he says, we're going to change all that. And that's exactly, now it's the opposite.
Yeah,
the party of the little guy is who? The Republicans. It's the college-educated elitists now who are on the Democrat side, but he's getting everybody in between. He's going after the black voters. He's going after Gen Z. Everybody's waving at me right now.
Yeah, so, we're going to a break. We are going to a break, but we will be right back. And I have to ask you, one of the big topics that Trump had during his speech yesterday was about the illegals that are coming over and what type of people they are. We're going to address that subject next on Sidebar.
This is News Radio 1200.
5-minute traffic delay. I'm Carson Parnell, News Radio 1200 WOAI.
This report is sponsored by OwnHillCountryLand.com.
Are you tired of the crowds and traffic of big city living? Then escape to the peace and beauty of the Hill Country, where big views and big oaks will help refresh you. Go to OwnHillCountryLand.com. That's OwnHillCountryLand.com.
You've achieved outstanding things in your life. Your home should be your haven.
1, 2, 3,
1200 WOAI. Remember what Zalo says. SidebarTV.com. That's where you need to go. If you want to join us after the show, and if you've just joined us for the first time today, after the show, during the show, we are on continue the conversation, but actually watch the show.
Yeah, thank you very much. If you have a preferred social media platform, Nico, what do you see more? Instagram or Facebook? Because I see you on both. Is it you're more Instagram?
I guess more Instagram.
Yeah.
Facebook is just every once in a while I'll post. Yeah. I'll post for.
You're more TikTok, right, George?
It's really Dobby for me.
Yeah, I don't know, man. That's a stretch. I'm not a big social media guy, but yeah. You got me set up on TikTok, so guess what?
The guy from Shark Tank is Dennis Leary, Mr. Wonderful.
Dennis Leary.
He's planning to buying TikTok.
Oh, good.
He's been saying it. He's like, I'm planning on buying it. If he does, a lot of things are going to change.
Well, that came up with the Logan. He said, I'm not banning TikTok. So all these influencers like, what? We're not banning TikTok. This is our livelihood.
That's how they make their money.
I'm telling you, Trump has been wise, man. My hope and my concern is if he stays disciplined or not. Because we've seen him where you think he's disciplined and you get your hopes up, and then he does some stupid crap and then just starts a fight that you don't need to. Fight the fights that are purposeful. Be strategic about it. He's got plenty of attention. He doesn't need to create his own attention. He's doing well. Let's see how it goes. I mean,
I see what you're saying, but at the same time, I just don't know how he has come this far without ripping somebody's head off because of all the things people say about him, all the lies. I mean, even was it last week, Nancy Pelosi was like, he needs a family intervention because he's a wacko.
She said that about him?
A little bit of projection, but yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean, to me, but why give her?
I know, but
Nancy Pelosi,
what kind
with
of
her
man
husband,
can do?
had some guy in there, weirdos, and him.
Wearing his
I don't know.
underwear.
I guess. I mean. Nancy Pelosi is not my standard bearer. I mean, she's pathetic. Let's move on. That's what I would say.
With comments like that, I don't know how he does it. I don't know how Trump just brushes off everything.
Look at what Jay
he's
Hernandez,
done that.
Look at what Jay Hernandez says. I believe that the Lord is humbling Trump by putting him through all these trials as a preparation, just like he does. Also, a comment on what you commented. Donald J. Trump is not arrogant. If he was, he'd be disliked, hated by everyone. He's just too confident.
No, well, I don't know about that. I think his confidence.
Probably cocky, I think.
Yeah, he's cocky. I mean,
where do you see his cockiness?
The way he conducts himself. First of all, never admitting you're wrong is an arrogant position. I've never heard him apologize for anything. And he's been wrong. He's wrong about Operation Warp Speed. He's been wrong about a lot of things. He hired a bunch of people wrongly. I think he did admit that one time. I made a mistake. I think I had to correct myself.
If he thinks he was right,
I think he's corrected on that.
Very.
But what if he thinks he's right and he's not?
That's fine, but he's not. I mean, but if he
thinks he's right,
if someone,
but that's dangerous because if you think, I mean, it's particularly because my sore spot's Operation Warp Speed, and I'm an avowed Trump supporter. I mean, in case you can't tell. And I'm critical of Trump on Operation Warp Speed.
Yeah.
The evidence that it was a really bad idea is overwhelming.
Yeah.
And in the face of overwhelming evidence, to not sit back and reflect and say, maybe I should have done things differently. I'm not really seeing a whole lot from Trump. He's avoiding that. His base has excused him in the sense that he's right on so many other things, and he's really the best fighter that we have right now. But Thalo, I think that's concerning. I think to not come back and say, maybe I should have done things wrong. Maybe I was given bad advice and I went with it. It was a wrong thing to do. And in my second term, I'm going to see what I can do to make things right. That would be a humble position to take.
But if he didn't have these qualities, so nobody could put up with what he's putting up with. I say this respectfully because I know Manu, but the Manu Ginobili effect, right? This like, Manu, I can't believe you did that. That's amazing. Manu, what are you doing? I can't believe you did that. You screwed up. I mean, you get the good with the bad, right?
Right.
And that's what you get with Trump. And so, but to think that, to Karen's point earlier, to think that you use the same strategy all the time, no war leader general will tell you that. Depends on your circumstances, your terrain, your opponent, your objective, your goal. So I mean, his personality is a personality. We have to deal with it. I'm just saying, I'm actually giving him a compliment. We've seen a course correct. We've seen he's still the same person. He's still talking bold. He's more poised. He's controlled. He's not allowed to be. He's not getting rattled, what I've seen. Let's see what happens with the debates. Debates are going to be interesting to see what happens.
Manuel says that, oh my goodness. Hold on. Oh my goodness. Nancy Pelosi's husband got hammered more ways than one. That's what he said.
Stop.
That's Manuel. There you go.
Okay, on to the next topic. We all know that.
Ray Rodriguez asked, did Trump take the jab? He did, right?
Yeah.
He did.
He said he did.
And he walked out, remember, on the helicopter? Remember that video? That was amazing.
Yeah.
Took the jab, got on the elevator, on the helicopter, and left. That was a nice one.
So one of the big topics during the Florida speech, Trump talked about the arrest of the ISIS suspects, and of course that brings up the renewed correlation between these guys walking across the border and the border being non-existent. How can the Biden administration even get around trying to say that the open border didn't have something to do with these bad dudes coming across?
Does he say that?
Well, no, but they're trying to fix things by doing some sort of, what is it? You can only 2,500 can come in a minute, or was it?
I mean, I think that's a mistake. He should just ride that out, because now, I mean, it makes it more obvious.
Yeah,
you could have done something, so you lied before, or you don't know what's going on, or both. It's probably both. And now you could have fixed it, but you didn't. And now you're going to pander to us, and that's like going the way he is. When he goes in front of Hispanics, he plays Despacito, and he goes into a black community and does something stupid.
Why do you want to hurt me by talking about that again?
Just be who you are. Just be who you are. Say, look, I love your ethnicity. I love your culture. I want to learn from it. Let me just be a guest. Don't try to pander. He panders to people, but a lot of those folks do. And it's offensive. And if you fall for it, I mean, then you're a fool, I guess.
What's he going to say? This is obviously deliberate. We've talked about that in here. I mean, come on. This is about a complete realignment of American society. So there's just no excuse. But the idea of vetting, what vetting are they talking about? They're vetting at face value. These guys will come in. I mean, this is reports from ICE, and this ultimately was the 8 individuals who have found to have terrorist ties that was reported this past week. That was originally reported by Bill Malugin from Fox News, correct? Isn't he the one that put that news out? And the way he presents it, I mean, they're coming in and they're telling you what their names are. They're not verifiable. Whatever documentation they have is whatever documentation they have. It's a face value vetting. There's no vetting really going on. And then they're releasing them. I can't believe it, on good faith. And so we're all shocked to find out that there are ties to terrorist organizations. We know that it's not just Mexico and Central America,
this is
Nico.
Nothing new.
It's Africa and the Arab world.
How many
it's
people
China.
on the terror watch list have come in?
It was when Trump was in office from 2017 to 2020, it was 11. From the time that Joe Biden took office until the present,
150 or something.
It's around 362. Okay, so that's 30 times the number of people on a terror watch list. Now, Nico's made the point, you don't need 360. There's evidence that it's in the thousands. We've had Chinese nationals. These are men of military age. Again, not just Mexico, not just Central America. Many are from Africa and the Arab world, from China, countries that are decidedly hostile to United States interests. The idea that it's just a handful, we don't know that. We don't know anything. That's the point. And so for Mayorkas to say that we have a safe and orderly border, give me a break. So I think this is an issue. You said you're the closest you've ever been to a single issue voter. Yeah. I think Americans share the same view.
Well, look, when you have New Yorkers talking about it now, I'm telling you, the thing that got me the most about the Trump Bronx rally was, I mean, a stereotypical old school, I don't know if she was Italian or Jewish or whatever, but the New York Bronx lady, older lady, just kind of hunched over a little bit, walking in. I've never voted the Republican in my life. I'm a Democrat, but I'm voting for Trump. Why? Yep. Things were better under Trump. Just it. That's all she knows, is my life was better under Donald Trump. It's not better now. And then now she's not going to sit there and talk about, border issues in detail with you or other stuff maybe. She just knows that life was better. And that it's better under Trump. Pull the bill back better under Trump. Things were better under Trump. That would be my slogan for him. Things were better under Trump. You don't have to like him, but things were better under Trump. You don't have to like it, but things were better under Trump. And just hammer that home. But I think he's showing a different side to his strategy when he's doing this personality stuff. But this is really nothing new, because before he ran for president, that's why I call BS on people when I look at objective facts. Even though I didn't like Trump initially at all. I go, but man, Oprah liked him. I mean, all the rappers liked him.
Hollywood loved him.
Hollywood. Joy Behar liked him.
Mm-hmm.
Baba Wawas liked him. All these ladies and all these people liked him.
They wanted to be invited to his parties.
They were charmed by him. They went. The Clintons wanted his money. He was a mover and a shaker, and everyone liked his personality. They liked him as a person, so they said. What changed? He runs for president and he says things you don't want him to say.
And then all of a sudden he became a racist and a Russian operative. I want to know what changed.
That's what got my attention. That's what got my attention when I looked at objectively, because I still didn't like his personality and he wasn't my first choice. I mean, I was initially I liked Marco Rubio's potential, and then he didn't hold up well under pressure. Mm-hmm. Now he's a solid dude. I mean, I hope he's the vice president pick in my opinion. But it looks like, I don't know. But we'll see. We'll talk about that on the after show. But
this is a serious problem. No one other than Trump, and certainly in 2016 when he came in, there was literally no one talking about the existential danger of illegal immigration. And he's been validated over and over and over and over again, completely validated. And Trump was really the only one who sort of put the magnifying glass, Nico, that said, look, this isn't just an inconvenience. This is dangerous. This is significant here. I mean, we've learned now. There's reports about every other week. You see reports of Chinese and Jordanians and others who are basically penetration testing military bases. They're literally making it across. They're subsequently arrested. What are they doing? This is happening with greater frequency. They're testing critical American infrastructure to the tune, I've lost count, 11 million, and we've had about 2 million getaways. This is a nation inside a nation. This is dangerous. And Trump has been a lone warrior on that message for a long time. And everybody else now has coalesced around it.
Okay, we have one more segment on Sidebar. Please stay with us, and maybe now during this break you can go get on a platform, and so you can watch video also. But we'll be right back with more on Sidebar. WOAI, this is Sidebar. Please join us after the show. We continue.
Yes, we are on Facebook right now and all the social media platforms, but we will still have an after show. So please log on and get involved.
So why don't we have a month dedicated to being heterosexual?
Yes, right.
Yes.
Sure.
Well, I mean,
they'll say, because you have it all year.
You'd be racist.
And you haven't struggled.
Well, you don't have it all year. I didn't do the stats on this. Look, we just need to have a very objective, mature, not snarky, respectful conversation about Pride Month versus what's going on with our children in school and an ideology that's being spread. I didn't do the numbers, but someone else did. There's like 145 days out of 365 days attributed to LGBTQ initiatives. I'll go fast. If I missed one, March is Bisexual Health Awareness, the whole month of March. March 31st is International Trans Day. April 6th is Sexuality Day. April 26th is International Lesbian Day. May 17th is International Day Against Homophobia. And I guess that means if you disagree with something that you're phobic. May 19th is Agender Pride Day. May 22nd is Harvey Milk Day. May 24th is Pansexual and Panromantic Day. The whole month of June is Pride Month, the whole month, which all this should be included, by the way. July 6th is Omnisexual Day. July 11th through the 17th is Non-Binary Awareness Week. July 14th, International Non-Binary Day. The 16th of July is International Drag Day. This one's real. I couldn't believe it. I had to double check. August 14th is Gay Uncle Day. Forget about the aunt.
What the?
September 16th through the 22nd is Bisexual Awareness Week. September 23rd, Bisexual Visibility Day. October is LGBT History Month. October 11th, National Coming Out Day. October 20th, International Pronoun Day. 24th of October, Asexual Awareness Week. And the whole month of November is Trans Awareness Month. November 6th, Trans Parents Day. November 8th, Intersex Day of Remembrance. The 13th of the 19th of November, Trans Awareness Week. The 20th of November, Trans Day of Remembrance. And the 8th of December is Pansexual Pride Day. So
I just became gay.
Well, I mean,
listening to that, dang.
I mean, it's a
gay
lot.
for a couple of seconds.
Right. Well, that's a lot.
Too many.
I mean, well, all I'm saying is this is all. Well, this is what the Pride Month is supposed to be about. And so you have Autism Awareness Month. You have Black History Month. You have Hispanic this month. I don't want a month for being Hispanic. I don't want a month for having a child on the spectrum of autism. We bring awareness to things. You talk about things. You give people freedom to do what they want. And what my issue with the whole Pride Month is the agenda towards children. And I'm not saying everybody. I know it. I have friends, and I consider them close friends, that live out that lifestyle, and they don't agree with a lot of stuff. I mean, that goes on during the movement of LGBT. And I heard another stat, and George, I don't know if you've heard this, that actually the support for gay marriage has gone down.
Yeah, that's why I wanted to follow up on your thought. You're stealing my thunder.
Oh, sorry, I didn't know you were going to say that.
No, but I mean, this is important because there's a huge gap here. You just read all of that. You can find that, by the way, at glad.org, I think, okay. Gay and Lesbian Alliance. They actually have a calendar. They've calendarized all this stuff, and it's what you said is totally spot on. The federal government is pushing this, is subsidizing, using tax dollars to push this. But you're right, culture's moving in an opposite direction. Yeah. And we're starting to see that more than ever. Please, finish your thought. I mean,
well, no, brother. I'm just saying if we look at the societies and the way they, and thank you, George, but we look at societies and we look at what the nuclear family, that's why the whole BLM Incorporated movement was it's Marxist. I mean, they're trying to detract and break up the nuclear family to replace it with something else. And so, and it's not an accident. Tomorrow's Father's Day. I mean, and we're going to talk about that before the show ends. Please remind me. I want to talk about Father's Day like we talk about Mother's Day and the beauty and the splendor of womanhood. The splendor of womanhood and their roles and their service to families and to societies as a whole. Without women and their function, the way God designed them biologically and functionality-wise, then we have no society. Now, of course, there needs men participate with that. They need sperm. But I'm just saying, to break away this traditional family unit, I believe you're 18 years old, as long as it doesn't hurt somebody else, you have freedom to make choices. My issue with the whole LGBT movement, the main issue, is this onslaught on children. And this whole transgender movement for children and this mutilization of children that I think is criminal. I mean, you're even seeing European nations moving away from these trans procedures on women, on children. I mean, we talked about this before. That's not partisan, by the way. That's not even, I mean, yes, there's Christian underroots to it, but Islamic people believe this the same way, but they don't get the same attacks that Christians do, by the way. I mean, and even I know atheists and agnostic people and Hindus and Buddhists and everybody else that say, wait a minute, this isn't how societies function. Let kids be kids. Let's protect the innocence of children. Let's raise them the way the parents sees fit, as long as it's not violating the law and it's not sexually or mentally or physically abusing them. There's protections against that. But that's the freedom to do that and raise your children. And then when you have this agenda, this LGBTQ agenda, into schools and everywhere, in banks and churches and everything else, it's like, well, no, there needs to be some type of resistance saying, no, look, you have the freedom to live your life the way you want to live your life, as long as it's not affecting other people, in physical harm. But leave kids alone. Leave kids alone. The end of story. Because if it's not okay for the neighbor to talk to your kid about sex, why is it okay for the teacher to talk to your kid about sex and to groom? And nobody wants this, by the way. I promise you. Nobody. You ask anybody, hey, would you let, Johnny Fulano come over there and walk naked around your kid and talk to them about sexual stimulation and sexual intercourse and see if they're interested in all this stuff? They go bananas, and they should go bananas, by the way. And the law would protect your child against that. But yet, under certain circumstances, and that's why this whole thing about parents reading books at school board meetings, and the school boards are stopping them, saying, "Hey, don't read that."
I've seen it. Yeah.
Like, hey, dumbass, you're saying my kid can read this for a homework assignment? It's in their library; they can read it alone. Talking about all kinds of sexual topics that are not appropriate for children. Forget about rating. But why you rate movies then? If we're gonna do this stuff, so. I think society is saying, hey, wait, look, we're seeing the benefit or the benefit of a traditional family unit with the freedom to live outside that when you're an adult. Once you're an adult, you can do that. And I have a lot of friends of mine, and I do, and I'm not trying to be that guy like, I got gay friends too. No, I have friends that live that lifestyle that say, look, Nico, we agree too. We know who you are. We know your faith. We know your beliefs. We understand how society has been built. But no, we don't support some of these things. And actually the movement, if you think about gay marriage, if support for gay marriage is actually dropping, well, then it's actually hurting the original movement of same-sex couples. So I think people need to wake up and just say, wait, what are we doing here? Give them a day, a week, like we don't have a Christian Pride Month. We have Christmas. We can't even say Christmas. We have Easter. We're talking about a bunny. What are you talking about? No one's talking about the resurrection of Christ anymore on Easter. Christmas, it's happy holidays. You can't even have a coach voluntarily ask kids to pray in the football field. Well, you can now, but it went all the way to the Supreme Court. You can't have a Christian baker not do that to the Islamic baker. They won't because they're afraid of the backlash. And so this unequal treatment of ideology, it falls on the church because the church doesn't educate people and doesn't talk and speak up. And then people, traditional families, that can respectfully have conversations don't stand up either. So this is what you get. This is what happens. And so I think this Pride Month and this 145 days is really, people don't even, I didn't even know this until I heard it and then I went to go look it up. I don't think it's appropriate. And I think children for sure should be off limits. Just let parents raise their kids. Let's give them certain values that we know are blessed. Don't steal, don't lie, cheat, and steal. Where does that come from? Why not lie, cheat, and steal? What's wrong with that? Well, give me a reason why it's not good to lie, cheat, and steal and to assault kids and to commit murder and to touch people inappropriately. Well, tell me why. And then you go to these parades, and these parades are very,
excuse me,
expressive.
We knew, and you and I had this conversation in the aftermath of Obergefell v. Hodges, that it would not be confined. It would not be confined to simply gay and lesbian sex. We knew that. This idea that marriage would be expanded to no longer be exclusively a man and a woman, that it would just be to, in the words of Anthony Kennedy, who I think wrote the majority opinion in Obergefell v. Hodges, two people who love each other. But the reality is, love is going to have has a very broad definition now. It's entirely subjective. And so the next domino to fall is transgenderism. And you're starting to see polyamorous relationships. I Googled the word throuple. It's all over the place. Any combination of three persons in a relationship. Pedophilia? You don't think so? Why not? This is an effort. We often say that Islam is a political system dressed up as a religion. LGBTQIA+ is the same thing, except it's a political system dressed up as a civil rights movement, because that's the only time that they actually got ground. Go back to 2008. What happened in 2008? Prop 8. Do you remember Prop 8? Californians came out in droves, and they voted in favor of a constitutional amendment to declare marriage singularly between a man and a woman. It passed, and then it was overturned in the courts. People were overwhelmingly against this movement. And until it became aligned with the civil rights, which is a Trojan horse, a civil rights movement, it never got anywhere. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No.
It sounds like you wanted to.
No, brother. Because I want to make sure I want to expound on that topic on the after show and other topics. But I think we'd be remiss if we don't spend the last minutes here talking about the importance of daddies.
Let's do it.
And Father's Day tomorrow. I mean, so do you look at the data? Pregnancy rates on a rise without a father in the home. Dropout rates from school are tremendously higher without and we can get into details after the show, or the dropout rates. Prison, over 80%, close to 80% of people in prison did not have a father in the home, a daddy in the home. So now there's fathering a child and then there's being a daddy, right? A sperm donor can be a father, got it. So but to me, I call it tomorrow Daddy's Day, because the importance of a daddy's relationship with his daughter, with his son, it's separate than the wife. Only mommies can do, and that's why Mother's Day, and they should be revered and given honor where honor is due. But this whole BS, and I'll say it the way I want to say it after the show, of toxic masculinity and this manhood and fatherhood and all this thing that has been beaten down, and men have been beaten down. That's why they're starving for leadership. And why do you think all these influencers, quote unquote, are bringing back manhood and fatherhood and understanding the role of being a servant leader? And for me as a Christian, it's a biblical mindset. After the show, we can talk about some biblical references from Deuteronomy 2, 5, and 6. Ephesians 6 talks about it as well. Proverbs 22, 6 says, start a child, raise a child up in the way he will go or she will go, and when they get older, they want to depart from it. Although there's certain roles that a daddy brings that a mommy can't, and same vice versa, but complementary together. It is the best environment for a child to thrive. And that's not just a biblical understanding. The data shows that, by the way. The agnostic data shows that as well. And so I want to say a happy Daddy's Day, a truly sincere, genuine happy Daddy Day. And we'll talk about this more on the after show. To all the daddies out there, not just the ones that father children, but the ones that step into a role, a stepdad, a grandfather, an uncle, a tío, a cousin, a brother, a sibling, somebody that has stepped into that role, because many kids don't have daddies. And I deal with people that their daddies suck. Their earthly daddy, their biological father, their sperm donor sucked. But that doesn't mean another man can't step into that role and fulfill that daddy role. Ultimately, the Lord Jesus Christ is your daddy and loves you and sacrificed and bankrupted heaven for you. And so you're never fatherless no matter what. But join us after the show. Happy Daddy's Day to all the daddy out there. Thank you for being involved in your kids' lives. Continue to raise them, discipline them, encourage them, love their mommies, because that's the best way you show love to the child. And we'll see you on the after show. God bless you.
George, you're on. You're in the spotlight because I do want to hear about this.
Well, so I didn't want to interrupt my brother Nico here. You wanted to end.
Well, I just wanted to
the
get
first hour.
I wanted to end the radio.
But you wanted
portion.
to transition, and dare I
Don't
use that
say
word? Dare I
trans.
use that word? You wanted to transition topic here too, right?
You went transition.
Which topic?
You were talking about daddies,
Oh, yeah,
daddy's
yeah.
day,
Uh-huh.
daddy day, and so forth. I mean, the issues are related, admittedly, because this is an all-out assault on the concept, on biological realities of masculinity and femininity.
Right.
This is an assault at the very earliest age of a child, so that you can confuse them. And I was reading an article. I don't remember which article it was. I read way too much stupid stuff. But Dylan Pontiff has a stage name, Santana Pilar Andrews. He's a drag queen star, if you can use those words together. And when he's not at an adult bar, or an adult club, I should say, he is at the Lafayette Public Library doing story hour for kids. And he had I was trying to find the place where I saw the quote, but he came right out and say, I mean, it was unbelievably transparent. He came right out and admitted that this is about grooming, and that's the word that he used. And I want to go and actually use the words that he said. Here is his intentions. Quote, I'm here to let you know, Lafayette Public Library, I'm here to let you know that this event is something that's going to be very beautiful and for the children. And the people that support it are going to realize that this is going to be the grooming of the next generation. In his words, what exactly is grooming? Because that's what this is about. We've used the word, and I think it's lost its meaning.
When was this?
In 2019.
Oh.
And so that word is very deliberate. What does that mean? It's about, we need to say it like it is. It's about the desensitization of kids to sexual abuse. Because what you're doing is you're confusing the child. You're unmaking the child psychologically. You're confusing them at the very core. And you are normalizing the absurd. You're normalizing the bizarre. You're encouraging children to experiment, for goodness sakes, with things that they are not ready for and they're totally confused about. You're setting them forth on a career, on a life of self-gratification. What could go wrong? How this isn't sexual abuse is beyond me. And yet the branding that this is somehow a great idea.
But this would be
this is so good.
But in the justice system, it would be. That's the hypocrisy of it. It would be. If you have a tío, an uncle, a step brother, or whatever, or even a stepdad or whomever that grooms a child, and that's part of you prove up a case that you desensitize them to a touch, and all of a sudden this is acceptable and this is acceptable, and then the touch on the knee and then the touch on the thigh. Touch on the upper thigh, and then before you know it, you're touching other places, and you're doing this and that. Or just scratch my back and do this. I mean, now I'm not talking about all. I'm not that guy. I'm not a paranoid guy, of interaction with family members. But I'm just saying. But this would be grooming in any other circumstance. When you talk about inappropriate things that's inappropriate. We think things are inappropriate in movies. Why have G, PG, PG-13, R-rated, and X-rated for what?
I wonder the same thing about
just
that.
Throw all that shit out. I mean, how can you say that? Oh, that's not appropriate for age appropriate. What the fuck does that mean anymore? I mean, think about it. And so it means nothing is my point. And again, this should not be a partisan issue. This should be just a common sense issue. We've lost common sense in our society about what's acceptable for a child. Kid can't smoke, kid can't get a tattoo. Kid can't miss school. Kid can't drive, but kid can change his gender or her gender. And shame on these doctors. I mean this. Shame on the doctors should be prosecuted. I really believe that. I mean, doctors that actually did these procedures, think about that. These procedures.
The Nazis did certain things that were comparable.
Very good point, Karen. I'm just saying. And just because the parents ignorantly and stupidly supported these things, let children be children. They can make up their own mind. You want to present whatever and educate them on things when they get older. If you're the parents, that's between you and God and your kids, and you'll see the effects of it. I'm just children need to be raised up properly, reading, writing, arithmetic. Understand that there's virtues in our society. Why do we value lying and cheating? Well, why not value it, meaning value not against those things?
Yeah.
Why do we value honesty and hard work? Or do we anymore? And all I'm saying is we've got to decide as a society. I think we're at a crossroads. We've got to decide, okay, what are the rules of engagement? Can I really try to go after your spouse? Well, that's wrong. Says who, motherfucker? Why? Because you're going after my kid. So why can't I go after your spouse? Can I really not try to cheat you out of money? No. Why? That's wrong. Why? You're trying to cheat my kid out of their innocence. I mean, can I really? I'm just. These are honest questions. I'm posing this as whoever's idea, my ideology, George, whoever's, has to be logically consistent. It should not violate the law of non-contradiction. It should be empirically adequate, meaning and experientially relevant. All these things need to come into play when you're setting a set of ideas, and society says, which we used to agree on, a set of rules. Here's our rule book, which is the penal code, right? The penal code is our moral compass. We value people not getting raped. Why not? Because we have said as a society, it's not good to force yourself on somebody. Don't expose yourself to children. Indecency with a child exposure. But yet, if we're in a parade, you can expose yourself? Wait a minute.
Yeah.
So if somebody we've seen cases like this. Somebody walks into a park and exposes themselves to a child and shows their erection. That's wrong? Why not? Why is that wrong? You got to tell me why it's wrong. Because I'm going to change the penal code if it's not. Because it's not right that Joe Blow and Susie Q get arrested for this, and they don't. Why can't people have sex in open public?
Because a kid might see it. Whoops,
Or,
never
no, forget
mind.
the
Right,
kid,
right.
Adults.
Right.
I mean, to try to sexualize and to the sexual gratification of somebody else. All I'm saying is we've got a set of ideas that we got to figure out what's the definition of right and wrong, good and bad, moral and immoral. And if we're in that battle, then they have to come with the data to show that that's better for everyone as a society. Show me the evidence. Show me where I'm logically inconsistent. Forget about me. Where our society's been logically inconsistent all this time.
Wow, it's hard to follow that. And the thing is, you gotta be vigilant about it. I'm just thinking about what happened with the abortion complex from 1973 until Dobbs was overturned. Dobbs overturned it last year. I mean, do we really want to go through a half a century of this nonsense? Because we don't really grasp what's going on. We don't really appreciate, the fundamental nature of the argument, Nico. Here, as we were talking on break, I was thinking about this for a moment, and it seemed profound to me that this political movement was losing virtually every single political battle right up until 2008. Because again, I bring up California of all places, Prop 8. The California residents came together and said, look, we need a constitutional amendment, a state constitutional amendment that says that marriage is exclusively between a man and a woman.
In California?
And it passed.
In California?
Prop 8, yes.
Prop 8, like ocho.
In 2008.
Prop 8.
Prop 8.
Ocho.
Proposition 8,
Got
yes.
it.
And,
Wow.
it passed. And so...
Forgot about that.
And so you want to talk about, I mean, I'm telling you, the tenacity of the weed these people have, a total rebranding. And so I pulled up this piece because I think it encapsulates the movement. It's dated November of 2008 in a magazine called The Advocate. It says, gay is the new black. And if you look underneath, it says the following: in the wake of California's passage of Proposition 8, protests are propping up around the country. This is a rebrand, right, and a regroup of strategy. Look what they did. And so are comparisons between gays and African Americans' fights for equality. Is gay the new black? Michael Joseph Gross examines two struggles for civil rights. And underneath, this gay is the new black says the last great civil rights struggle. And this is when they began winning. And they became an indomitable force. And from 2008 to 2015, when Obergefell v. Hodges, the ruling came forth that legalized gay marriage, so-called gay marriage. What they did is they literally made it a civil rights movement so that anybody would push back, whether it was a parent or a pastor, would be seen as discriminatory and bigoted in the same way you would be if you were discriminating against someone on the basis of race. And so until that happened, Nico, Americans were not on board because they were thinking in the terms that you're defining right now. But the rules of engagement, to use the terms you just used, changed because they made it about civil rights. And so do we need to wait another 50 years before we realize that this is not about civil rights? Okay, if you're black and you're blessed to be born black, that's an immutable biological reality. It cannot be changed. That is not the case. There is zero evidence to suggest that that is the case when it comes to sexual preferences. And so I don't know how in the world, I honestly don't. I don't know how in the world there wasn't sufficient pushback on here, rationally, logically, how far we've come. And so I'm wondering, until you actually go back and undo it and say this actually is not about civil rights, this is a strictly political movement dressed in civil rights, until we go back, I don't know that it'll ever change. And so I don't know what it's going to take to get to that point. I'm just simply saying.
Look, I mean, I like to assess situations where they're at. I mean, so gay marriage is legal, and so I uphold the law, so it's legal. I'm a Christian. I'm a Christ follower. I believe marriage is between one man and one woman, not one man and two women, not two women, not two men. But that's not even my idea. I'm just following the idea of Christ. Genesis 2 and Matthew 19, where a man leaves his parents, a woman leaves her parents, and they join to become one in many ways, spiritually, emotionally, sexually, to work in a collaborative effort, in a compromising effort, complementary effort to live a family, to grow a society, and raise children. I believe that. My issue is with the onslaught on children, and I know it's a strategy, and that's my issue with kids. That's the problem with me and the trans movement. The trans movement, to me, is something extremely dangerous. Obviously, it's shown that. I mean, kids today now, it's kind of a fad. It's this to be gay or to do this. To George's point, I have not seen the evidence that there's a gene. Yeah, I just haven't seen the evidence. I'm open to it, of course. I think there's a lot of environmental influences. I think the evidence supports that pretty strongly. And I think there should be loving response to that, to someone that is in the lifestyle. Like I said, or not. They're going to say, well, I don't need your loving response to me. This is the way I am, so screw you. I got that, and that's fine. I'm just saying that I think they have felt rejected in the past, and I'm not going to reject the person, but I am not going to acquiescence or agree with or endorse a lifestyle of any behavior, by the way, that does not comport with, I don't think, what's healthy for a society. But with me as a Christian, as I'm saying, the Islamic person will say the same thing, by the way. And so that's it.
Who are you talking about that felt like they were rejected? Who?
Gays, I think, in the past. And that's what the whole movement was about, that they were either made fun of and not accepted in society and all that. It wasn't as open about it as now. I'm just saying that's the argument. Mm-hmm. And that's fine. You're trying to make it. And that's why I said it's counterproductive, is if less people are supporting gay marriage now, well, then the objective of the original movement is being harmed, is my point.
Well, it failed prior to coming under the blanket of civil rights. It failed because Nico set this up well. It failed. Why? Why did that argument fail? Because they were trying to put it on equal footing with heterosexual relationships, as if to say they wanted a state sanction to say, hey, those are equitable, and they're obviously not equitable. Right? A heterosexual relationship and a homosexual relationship are on their face not equitable. And so marriage doesn't apply to that. I mean, I'm a Christian, so biblical marriage is very clearly defined as the union, the monogamous union between a man and a woman, from Genesis all the way through the New Testament. It's seen that way. It's presented that way, from the prophets to Jesus to the epistle writers. So that's from a biblical definition.
You're talking about biblically endorsed, because obviously the Bible in the Old Testament references polygamy, because that was
but that's not marriage.
That was a cultural fact that is just reported in the Bible.
I'm talking about marriage.
Yeah, it wasn't endorsed by God, is what George has meant. I just want to make sure that
the Bible, being historically honest, does mention other types of relationships that were not endorsed, that indeed are unbiblical. I'm specifically talking about marriage. I always say gay marriage in quotes because from a biblical perspective, there's no such thing. But Nico's right. Obergefell made it law. It is what it is. Sure. But so the question becomes now, as a Christian, as a concerned American, what the hell do we do? I'm not going to sit on my ass about it. We need to be honest. We need to have conversations about it. We need to be bold. I think you're right. We can't be dicks about it either. That doesn't help. But that's a general good rule to live by, right? Just don't be a dick. I mean, no matter what, don't be a dick. But particularly in these discussions, because people are so sensitized to it. But we're at a point now where it literally becomes discriminatory. How did it happen? Because it wasn't that way. Originally, they were trying to make a political argument. That's all. They were trying to make a strictly political argument. It fell flat on its face because on its face, these relationships are not equitable. You can't produce human life. So on its face, building a civilized society, that can't happen. Men and women are not the same. Men and men together are not the same as men and women. This was pretty straightforward prior to 2008. Yeah. And they knew that. And so until it came under the banner of the civil rights movement, it never got any traction. So I was simply proposing that as we have conversations, Nico, and I think this ties back to abortion, because what got blown over in the abortion argument? The fact that that's a human life. Mm-hmm. How did that get lost? I mean,
don't you though see? In my mind, I keep on thinking of this whole LGBTQ plus or I plus. Yeah. If I were gay, I'd be even pissed off about all of those extra letters because I gay and trans, they're not, in my mind, they're not really the same. And when I think of trans, I keep on thinking, is the whole trans movement against women? And the reason I say that is yes, I know it goes the other way around. Trans women is a guy becoming a woman or thinking he's a woman. But it seems like the bigger thing is it's men transitioning to be a woman to get into the bathrooms, to play against sports. Like, you don't see any woman going to play on a men's team because they can't compete.
Well, that's a great point, Karen. And that's why the whole bathroom thing we said back then, it wasn't about the bathroom. I mean,
I don't ever want to go into a men's bathroom.
Well, I mean, unless you're looking for a date, right?
Right.
But, I mean,
Shut up.
But tough times these days, Karen.
No, I know.
There may be better ways to do it.
But look, and I've said this in the show before. I mean, for years, this is years ago, I went to a hairdresser, Amber, and she, and I say she because I choose to say that, by the way.
Yeah.
She presents as a woman.
She didn't force you to.
No, and I'm very fond of her, and we always catch up every once in a while. I saw her at a restaurant of last year and embraced her, and I just think the world of her. We had wonderful conversations. She would, and she, I mean, she's funny to me. I mean, and so, but she presents herself as a drag queen. I mean,
yeah, that's different,
she never said,
right?
The word trans never came up back then. This was years ago. I mean, over 20 years ago. I've been married 18 years, so it was a while back. But she really was very traditional. Amber, I remember went and raised her nephew and her nieces, and just very traditional. She came from a traditional family, and back then I don't think deep enough to ask those probing questions, which I would now. And I just think the world of her. And Davi's met her over the years, and I think the world of her. And so we need to show love. But I'm going to step out on a limb, and I don't think Amber would be for it because she performs to adults. I don't think she'd be for against. And I know there's a whole movement where there's drag queens that are like, wait a minute, this is an adult performance. It's very adult, and it stays with adults. So,
but even sometimes drag queens don't say that they're a woman. They just dress like a woman.
Well, many do. It just depends. I mean, there was transvestites. There was drag. I mean, I'm not being disrespectful. I'm trying to understand it all because it switched as a while. Because now it's turned to, if you're transsexual, that you can present as a man and still identify as a woman. But Amber and others, like, she goes, I'm a woman. She got this, and so I'm a woman. Presents as a woman 24/7. It wasn't a kind of
I love this. I love this conversation. Right. I love being quiet and listening to you two talk, because this is the point you've brought up. You just did it 15 minutes ago, and I kind of wish we parked there a little bit. Okay. Because I wanted to push back a little bit on you. Go ahead. Because you and I are in agreement, but I wanted to just tease this out of you a little bit, because you're like, you said, my issue is the children. Like this is all okay because you're consenting adults, but we want to protect the children. And yet, literally a few minutes before, you directly said, the problem is there's always going to be, once you open up Pandora's box, the next domino is always going to fall. Mm-hmm. There's no way society to confine it from the kids. The kids are going to be, it's a particular level of horror when a child gets victimized by this. But the problem is that this is immoral at its core, and so there's no end. There's no limitations. I promise you, we haven't seen the end of it. Every year, whatever that is, every month, periodically, you're going to see some other iteration or some other bizarre sexual arrangement or relationship. And as a society, Nico, just getting back to this, at some point we have to say, what have we done?
But I don't
and
want,
when is it no longer
I don't
okay?
want kids watching heterosexual sex or hearing about heterosexual sex. I don't want why kids can't watch porn. Nobody should, by the way. But I mean, kids can't. There's certain they can't even watch an R-rated movie if you're under 13. I mean, and there's kissing and nudity. They can't even see nudity, but they can go on the internet and see it all over the place.
Sure.
I mean, so it's just kid appropriate. Would you push back? Please keep pushing back. I mean, I'm not sure what the pushback
I meant to say is that it's hard to have one conversation and not talk about the rest of it.
Sure.
And I realize there's two prongs. There's the moral and the political. I got it.
Right. That's
So
right.
we can talk the moral, and those are individual choices. But the problem is you now have a government apparatus, a subsidy of this behavior, and we see the consequences in society. And so I don't know how you have a conversation, and I just don't.
We gotta have conversations without yelling and name calling and being called homophobic and transphobic. But again, I this is where I really push back. I've never heard anyone called a Christphobic, a Jesus-phobe, or a Christian phobe, or is there Islamic phobe? There's all kinds of all of the phobias and the conditions, but there's not a traditional phobe or a conservative phobe or anything else. I mean, but it's all this one-way piñata bullshit attack. And because the church has no balls, or whatever you want to say, church bells, and because people don't want to be called names, we can't just have conversations. I mean, I've had wonderful conversations with friends and acquaintances that we disagreed with on these issues, but they know me because they've been around me and they do life with me in professional settings or things of that nature, and they knew that my morals was going to say that you got the image of God in you, whether you know it or not. And so I'm going to love on you that way. I'm going to speak truth to you lovingly, and I'm not going to let anybody abuse you. I'm not going to let anybody break the law. You deserve to be protected and defended in the sense of legally. But I'm not going to agree with something. This is my point, Karen. I told this to an acquaintance / a friend, and I say, what am I supposed to do? And give me advice, please. And I pose it to them. I believe, and I touched them as sure as I touch you right now. We're at lunch. As sure as I touch you right now, I believe I'm going to stand before the creator of the universe. I believe in intelligent design. I believe the intelligent designer is the God of the Bible. If you think in intelligent design, you don't have to necessarily believe it's the God of the Bible. You just believe in intelligent design. But I do. I believe Jesus Christ, a first century Jew, historically walked this earth. Atheists will tell you that was God incarnate. I believe that. I believe that I'm going to stand before him when I leave this earth. And there's a lifestyle, to include other lifestyles, by the way, that is not endorsed by the prescription of life, the rules of engagement that he has designed society. What am I supposed to do about that? Should I not act as if I know and believe that I'm going to stand before the creator of the universe? But in that same act, in that same preparation for standing before the creator, is to show you love and respect, and to be a friend to you, and to show you friendship, and to try to answer questions, and to protect you from people that are going to try to harm you. And to be dependable to you if you need a friend, and to be an ear for you, and yes, to pray for you if you ask me to, and to fight for you to live the life you want to. I'm going to fight for you to have the freedom to do that. I'm not going to advocate it. I'm going to fight for the freedom because I believe in. I'm a constitutionalist. I believe in freedom. Jesus believes in freedom, by the way, in Revelation 3:15. He goes, "I'm going to knock on the door, and if you open it, I will come in and dine with you." I'm not going to kick it open like a SWAT member. I'm not part of it. Navy SEALs, because he wants relationship with us, so he's got to give us the option to stiff arm him, right? And that's what I want, relationship. And so so just because I have a set of ideas that adhere to a biblical understanding of God's design, that doesn't mean I hate you. I don't hate you. And she goes, and this person said, "Oh, I know for a fact you don't hate me." I love that response. I was floored. It paused me. It literally said, "I know for a fact you don't hate me." And I sat back in my chair and I said, "Thank you, Lord, that I felt like I represent you well." Because Jesus came for people that told him to piss off. And he said, "I'm going to die for you. That's how valuable you are to me." God values people in that community. He wants them to live differently, and he wants them to live by the design he has. But he died for them. He died for my stupid fucking ass and how I was lost. He died for the whole world, everybody. And he gives this wonderful... So if I believe that, Karen... What am I supposed to do? And that applies to abortion. That applies to everything. Marriage, child, parenting, fatherhood, friendship, adversarial confrontations. That applies to everything in my life. And then you know what the person said? Then you have to live the life that you believe God wants you to live. And I said, I do, and I appreciate that. And that part of that life is loving you. Just, I want you to know that. It was a great conversation.
Ruth said, have you ever changed the view when discussing your view with liberals or whatever?
Not ever in the moment. I've never talked to someone that lives that lifestyle that has said, I'm not going to live that lifestyle now. I've planted seeds.
Yeah.
I had a fascinating discussion with somebody. I don't have permission to use her name. She was a friend of somebody else that we were talking about a business opportunity. And she knew how strong I am in my faith. And she goes, I want you to know something. I'm married to a woman and I want you to know that. And I said, oh, I know that. And she goes, I just didn't know if you wanted to do business with me. I was like, I'll do business with you. I hear you're very good at what you do. And she goes, can I give you my story? I said, absolutely. So she was a praise and worship leader for a church. And she had these, I can't think. Proclivity. Sorry, I couldn't think of the word. She had this attraction to women. She knew that she had this attraction to women for a long time. And when she decided to come out, she went to her pastor and said, I can no longer be the praise and worship leader because I know that's not acceptable in leadership to a church. She lived the lifestyle for a while. She came back to her faith. If I'm screwing the story up, I don't know if I doubt she's listening, but I mean, I want to make sure, I don't know if I'm perfect with it. She ended up getting married. Her and her wife, somebody donated a sperm. It was artificial insemination. They had a child together. She was not the mom, the birthing mother. But they're celibate. And I said, what? And she goes, we're celibate. There's a very small group of us. There's a larger group of same-sex couples that are Christian and they believe in Christian and they struggle in this area, but they are seeking a relationship with the Lord, but they know that they struggle in this area.
Wow.
But my wife and I have chosen to be celibate. And I said, why? And I was fascinated by this answer. And she goes, we don't want to risk the chance of not seeing our children in heaven. I was floored. And now I didn't ever have a follow-up. I wanted to, God, can we talk more about them? I mean, this is our first meeting. And she knew my faith because I'm very open about it. And I love that she still met with me. And I love that we had this conversation.
That's amazing.
And it was amazing to me. And I didn't ask her yet. It's like, but why would you treat something that God holds as sacred as marriage versus just living with each other? Because you're essentially roommates, but yet you're concerned about the parenting side of it and the sexual side because you know that sex is sacred to God, but so is marriage because sex happens only within marriage. I didn't have a chance to ask her that yet. It was just a neat conversation. These are the conversations we need to have. All this bullshit of hate and yelling. And I get it. Why? Because the other side is yelling and because the movement that George is talking about is so aggressive that you almost feel like you have to say, fuck off, man. This is what I'm going to protect my kids. Don't push it on me, man. But the conversation that I'm just sharing with you, and then my friend Amber, who cut my hair for years before, a long time ago, this is what I think this is where you find ground. And you, because you need to nurture a relationship.
The one-on-one, though, there's hardly ever a problem when you know the person knows you. To me, you're friends, and then you can ask the questions that you're too afraid to ask somebody who you think is going to become unhinged because you asked the question or whatever. I don't know.
I think this is really tough. This is I love listening to those stories. I've had a few examples of my own, and these are tough. You want to be a genuine friend to people. You want people to feel comfortable, come talk to you about these things. And yet, as a believer, if you're having an honest conversation, I mean, you got to get to a point, and maybe it's not in the first conversation. Maybe it's the 8th conversation. Maybe it's the 25th conversation. Who knows? But definitely keep the open door of relationship, because if that door shuts, then what? But I think at some point you got to deal with the idea that the Bible is our standard, because this is ultimately a moral problem. This is ultimately a spiritual problem. I know it manifests as a political issue ultimately in society, but it is a spiritual issue, and bringing it down to that level and having those conversations with people, I think that's the real hope. And you can't accede certain things. You can't say, yeah, I realize there's a difficulty in changing those behaviors, but that is not an argument to embrace them either, just because something is difficult. And this is where the argument, well, this is genetic. There's nothing I can do about it. I was born that way. And there's quite literally zero evidence of that. The study of that, the discipline is called epigenetics. It's the idea that there are certain markers on your genome that code for
for a particular phenotype. In other words, your hair color or your eye color. It has a genetic footprint. There's a particular area of your of genetic sequencing where an allele, a gene that codes for that trait, is. And so the argument is that there is a gene or a series of genes or a series of areas on your genome that code for homosexual preferences.
That's real? That's a true thing.
That's been around. In fact, goodness gracious, I've gotten on debates about that for 20 years because there's literally no evidence of that. And so-called studies that show that are really piss poor done and establish no such link. But the point is, even if it was, I want to get beyond that for a moment, even if it was a genetic issue, just say, and I use the analogy of alcoholism. Nico and I have talked about this on a number of occasions because it's a legitimate analogy, because there actually is some evidence that in familial lines, as it pertains to a familial genome, that there may be markers for reasons we don't fully understand. Markers can be turned on and turned off. When you go and you get tested for certain cancer markers, that's the same concept. That there's literally areas of your genome that code a certain way and are associated with cancer manifesting in a familial line. Well, there's some evidence that may be the case with alcoholism traits in family lines. So the question becomes, is it okay then to be an alcoholic? Is it okay?
Because you were born that way.
Because I was born that way.
Yeah.
My daddy and my daddy's daddy and my daddy's daddy's daddy and my mom's daddy and so forth.
Or to be temperamental.
Brother,
that was mine. Salvo, you're right.
That's legit. So the Bible says, again, that the Bible's position is that the difficulty in changing those behaviors that the Bible unequivocally declares as sinful because it's destructive to you and others doesn't mean you should embrace them. It doesn't make it okay to embrace them. And that's where we are here with this whole literally plethora now, a growing list. That's the LGBTQIA plus list of sexual sins. Yeah. When society comes around it and it legalizes it, it becomes increasingly more difficult to even have conversations about it. And it becomes even more difficult for people to change. But we serve a hopeful Christ. There are people who are changing all the time. You know, I like Dr. Orwin Lutzer. In November 19, he spoke at a conference, and at that same conference, there was a woman who was a former lesbian.
Beckett Cook is a great testimony too.
There are some fantastic books out there. Christopher Yuan, Yuan, get his book on this. Rosaria Butterfield, fantastic testimony. The story that I was remembering is from Ann Paulk, Paulk, former lesbian. She abandoned the mindset, repented, got married, had children. And at that conference, and Nico, the name of the conference escapes me because I wanted people to go back and look at the transcript or at least look it up because it was amazing. She made the statement that when God was not in my life, she said, I literally had no reason to say no to anything. You have Jesus as King on your shirt. You usually have Jesus changes everything. Jesus changed everything. He didn't come in and tell her something she already knew. He came in and gave her the power to change because in and of herself, she couldn't. That's the point. A walk with Christ, getting back to God. And this is why we say this is a neo-Marxist movement politically, because Marxism rejects God. Marxism makes you God. It makes whatever it is you want to do God. Whatever society pursues, that's God. She said, I abandoned that mindset. God established governance over my life, and all of a sudden the impossible became possible. I wanted to change. I wanted to please him. And it became a road. It isn't something that changed overnight. Godly people who loved her came alongside her and helped her to walk with Christ. She had a loving pastor, a loving church community who wasn't waving their finger at her, who was literally walking biblically with her. This is a difficult thing. It is a painful thing. But there's hope, Nico. In Christ, there's hope. So there are two conversations. There's the political shit, and then there's the spiritual aspect, which happens to be the root issue, isn't it? It's ultimately the root issue. The question is, how do you have conversations like that?
Well, I mean, you do it lovingly, but also truthfully. Ephesians 4:15 says to speak the truth in love, but also 2 Timothy 1:7 says do it without timidity and fear. And so you have to be bold about it, but you have to know how to have these conversations and build up that trust. I mean, many of these conversations happen because people are watching you and they can trust your character, and they know that you're going to love people the way, if you're a Christian. I mean, I love when people say you're a different Christian. I mean, you talk raw, you're regular, but you really you make sense. Well, good. Then praise God that I'm not a goofy kumbaya Christian, because I don't want that. I mean, we have to be practical in how we represent Christ to people. To me, but I think this goes back to our Father's Day discussion. I mean, because you look at the people that are in prison, and when I was in office, it was 72 to 75%. I think it's up to 80% now. People that are incarcerated have a fatherless home, and we know that for a fact. We know the dropout rates. We know the teen pregnancy rates are higher. I mean, I know it's different these days, but I mean, just in general, higher. Everything is worse off when you don't have a daddy in your life. Period. End of story. And these are agnostic stats. Forget about you can tie it into a biblical understanding, but just agnostic stats. I mean, like I'm just gonna go back when I talk to people about things. I mean, Deuteronomy 6 is Old Testament. Yes, Old Testament. It's not all brimstone and fire, and God's not bipolar, and He doesn't need lithium.
Last time we checked, we got the 10 Commandments from the Old Testament.
Yeah, so that so these are the commands, decrees, and laws you to observe in the land. So these are decrees, rules of engagement, so to speak, that you're crossing the Jordan to possess. He's giving them into a new season in their lives because they're stuck in their own bullshit. So that your children and their children after them may fear the Lord your God as long as you live by keeping all His decrees and commands that I give you, so that you may enjoy a long life. Then you go down to 5, love the Lord your God with all your heart. This mimics Matthew 22:36, by the way. It's in the Old Testament. Love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your strength. These commands I give you today, put them on your hearts, impress them on your children. See, impress these commands on your children. Talk to them when you sit at home and when you walk along the road, when you lie down and when you get up. Tie them as symbols on your hands and bind them on your foreheads. Write them on your door frames of your houses. That's why we wrote on our studs when you built the house, George, and on your gates. I mean, a daddy is supposed to be the spiritual leader in the household. Now, if there's no daddy in the home, then of course the mommy can do that. But that's why complementary together, the mommy does, and together they're equally yoked on the same page. And I'm not doing this to brag, promise you. I'm just giving an example. Yesterday we came back from the coast. That's why I look all charred up. and Michael loves the coast, our son on the spectrum. It's just so soothing for him. Davi grew up on the coast, and so it's her happy place. We just love going down there. And we're driving up. We stopped for a bathroom break, and I'm walking out with Zaither, and there's a lady and her daughter walking out right behind us. And so I open the door and I go, Zaither, right? You open the door and you wait for ladies to go by. And then she walked by and she goes, thank you so much for teaching your son that. And then she ended up having a conversation. And to her daughter, and then even the son followed, thank you, sir. And she goes, I really appreciate that you're modeling that for your son, and that you, and she didn't say, but she appreciated me holding the door open for her. Yeah. There are some people in a certain eyes, don't hold the door open for me. Well, I'm going to. I mean, you don't have to like it. You don't have to. One lady told me, you don't have to open the door open for me. I go, I don't have to. I want to. And she looked at me like, huh. I said, well, okay, have a blessed day, and then walk off. And what are you going to do? I mean, that's why my pop raised me. I don't have a choice. I mean, my pop instilled it. He impressed it on me to say yes or no, sir. He impressed it on me that when a woman stands comes to your door, to your table, that you get off your fucking ass and you stand up for her, because you show the respect and honor to a woman. Yeah. It's a sign of respect. I do like a little tilt. I mean, I grew up fighting in martial arts, so I'm very used to bowing and just the nodding. And respecting your teachers, and yes ma'am, no ma'am, yes sir. I say it to my pop today. That's just the way I was raised. I can't take it out. I remember one time I didn't stand up for a lady. I was at a restaurant and my pop was already standing, and me and my older brother were sitting down. My mom was sitting down. It was packed, and we were in the waiting room. And my pop looked at me, and he looked at me again. Then he pinched me and he goes, stand up and offer your seat to that woman. I said, oh, ma'am, do you want to sit down? Thank you, sir. I so much appreciate it. It's like, wasn't my idea. He fucking pulled me on the side. I mean, and then my pop goes, you better never. I mean, this wasn't my idea. I mean, but because you don't ever sit down. If there's ever a woman standing in your presence, you better give that seat up. I mean, that's just the way it is. And that's what I instill on Michael. Obviously, he's on the spectrum, so he doesn't understand things, but or at least not the way that I want him to. But Zaither, I mean, I make him open the door for Leah. I go, what do you do? And Leah goes, What do you do? It's like there. Poppy says, "Open the door
love
for."
that.
That's what I want. I want my daughters to expect.
It's not just some old-fashioned social practice. Look, I have a house full of women.
Yeah.
I have one 16-year-old son, 3 daughters, and a beautiful wife, and so I've taught the same thing to Jaden from day one. And I tell him, we're going to a restaurant. If I don't get to that door first, you better be standing there, and you better wait
100%.
until every single female gets by. And there's a message there. It's not just we do something just because we do something. There's a very strong biblical principle here in the elevation of women, that women are precious.
Yes.
And they are meant to be protected. They're meant to be honored.
Revered,
and not worshipped, but honored, loved, cared for, because they're precious. And they bring such unique value that my dumbass can't reproduce.
No.
Because guess what? I'm not a fucking woman. Okay? I'm a man. And that's a biological reality. And there's an impassable gulf there that can't be crossed. But yet, we ought to honor that difference and cherish it and protect it, And it's beautiful. And so that's a very biblical principle. And that's also been rather American.
Yeah, it used to be
right?
anyway.
And so we got to get back to that. Ultimately, I think, Nico, and I'm glad you opened up, it's not a can of worms. I think it's the kind of conversation we need to have. It's ultimately a spiritual discussion. And we gotta be comfortable. If you're a believer, you gotta be comfortable having those discussions.
But I want women. I want my daughters to appreciate a biblically minded man. I officiated my first wedding last weekend. For Tyler and Chelsea Hall.
Oh,
you were there,
cool.
George.
Yeah, he was waxing up.
And so I've led a lot of people to marriage. I mean, I've counseled marriage, George and I. But it was neat.
Very poised. You'd never tell he was sweating.
It's only 100 degrees outside.
Exactly.
No, I was comfortable. I'm comfortable.
I don't mean
talking
sweating in that way. I mean literally
Oh
sweating.
yeah, it was outside. It was an outside wedding. But I teach my daughters about roles, and I want them to understand the word submit. It doesn't mean to be dominated. It just means to support the mission. You're there to support the mission of your husband, and your husband's duty and role and responsibility, which is a huge one, is to love the wife like Christ loved the church. That means he served, sacrificed, and died for the church. Now, what woman would not support that mission? Has nothing to do with domination. That word submit, I submit to a dentist. You submit to a doctor. If I know it's a crazy idea, people submit to their lawyer, submit to a mechanic.
Yeah.
You submit to a whatever, carpenter. We all support the mission of somebody serving us and doing something and doing a quid pro quo and a business relationship. That's all it means. And what I teach the house, and I'm going to do my best to this experiment, is in 1 Peter 3. I mean, God says, if you don't love her that way in the role of a husband and daddy, it's going to hinder your prayers to me. So as a Christian, that should wake your ass up.
Right.
So I want my daughters to be, you don't need a man, you should want a man. To honor God, to have a family, to have Christ as the mortar, and to co-labor together, to raise and to represent Christ in the community and in your home. That's how we. But my daughter wants to be a lawyer. I'm trying to talk her out of it, but the oldest wants to be a lawyer. I think she's gonna be a damn good one. But she holds the duty. She wants to be a mommy first. And I said, well, then I think being a lawyer could help, because you could walk. I know many lawyers that have walked away from the law of practice, raised their families for a period, and then gone back to work.
They're both about good negotiation.
Well, there's no negotiating in our house. I mean, it's kids. It's a monarch. I mean, there's no democracy. Our children do what
I
we
think
say.
standing in the gap between false claims that hurt people and the truth, which sets people free. I mean, a good, decent, honorable lawyer has a very important moral role in society. And I would say whether they're Christian or not, a good, solid, decent, equipped, trained lawyer, capable lawyer, I think serves a very moral purpose. Right? Standing in the gap between bullshit and reality.
I want just to mention one thing that several people, as we wrap up, I just want you to know that they've all been saying, okay, enough about Pride Month. What do we do about Russia being parked at our back door? Yeah. Is that something, I don't want to start a whole conversation, but do you have any thoughts on them?
We chatted about that during the week. I tend not to make too much of a big deal about it. Look, people should know this has been going on since at least the last 15 years. It's not unusual. You can argue that there's more firepower there now than before. Fair enough. You could also argue that had if Trump was in office, he would probably be saying a few words. I think that's true as well. But this isn't unprecedented. It is in the news, and it's a concern because we've never been so weak. We'll talk
about it next week. But
Yeah.
I do think it's a move of intimidation. I mean, because if to George's point, there's never been more firepower there, and so so those submarines have capabilities. Now, could we respond a certain way? We're not going to block it. It'd be a hit. I mean, I don't think it should go without being acknowledged. We can talk about it next week. I think it's not an accident. Putin in the middle of a war. You think he's going to do that? Yes, even though this has been going on for a while. I mean,
that
he's
we're
not stupid.
funding.
I wouldn't be prepared to say, well, if Trump is in office, this would never happen. I don't know if that's true. I think it would be less likely to happen. But these have been going on even during the Trump administration. The point is that it's less about Russia, isn't it, than exposing just how weak our leadership is right now. Our military recruitment has never been so piss poor because people are running from the military. Our military leadership is a disaster. China is getting increasingly more and more strong. So I think it accentuates those things, and from that standpoint, it's very alarming.
All right.
Done.
Out of here.
Yeah.
Have a blessed Father's Day, Daddy's Day to all the daddies out there. Now, thank you. Just continue to love and lead your children. Love their mom. Even if there's a separation or a divorce, you can still show respect. Do your best to bring peace to your household. Model it for your children. If you have a daughter, are you the type of man that you want your daughter to marry? And if not, you should pray about that. So think about those things. And are you the type of man that you want your son to grow up to be like? Pray about those things. Talk about those things. Think about those things. I think that's a good kind of starting place on your analysis and your own report card on how you're doing as a daddy. Happy Daddy's Day. God bless you guys.